Hello everyone, I'm Kanupriya Sharma and I welcome you to this video solution for a boldface OG question by GMATQuizMaster. The main challenge in this particular question is to identify the main conclusion. If you also depend on conclusion indicator words such as clearly, therefore, etc. to identify the main conclusion, you may very well fall for the trap answer choices here. It is important to understand the main conclusion and not just depend on the conclusion indicators to get to it. So let's break it down and understand it further. Let's start with passage analysis. In countries where automobile insurance includes compensation for whiplash injuries sustained in automobile accidents, reports of having suffered such injuries are twice as frequent as they are in countries where whiplash is not covered. So, the first statement, which is also the first boldface statement, compares the number of reports related to whiplash injuries in two types of countries. What are the two types of countries? The first one is where a compensation for whiplash injuries is included. And the second one is where compensation for whiplash injuries is not included. And the first statement tells us that the frequency of reports for such injuries is almost double here. So if there are 100 reports every month in these countries where compensation is included, there are only 50 reports per month in the countries where the compensation is not included. And this number we have just taken as an example to understand that the frequency here is double. So this is a fact given to us. Let's read further. Presently, no objective test for whiplash exists. So it is true that spurious reports of whiplash injuries cannot be readily identified. So the author is presenting another fact here that there is no objective test for whiplash at the moment. So it is true, which means that the author agrees that it is not possible to identify the fake reports of such injuries. We cannot distinguish between reports that are related to actual whiplash injuries versus the reports that are related to fake whiplash injuries. All right, let's read further. Nevertheless, still, these facts, now what are these facts? The first one is related to the difference in frequency, and the second one is related to the absence of an objective test because of which we cannot verify the reports. Still, these facts do not warrant the conclusion drawn by some commentators. So the author is saying that yes, these facts have been given, I agree, but still we cannot arrive at the conclusion that the commentators are arriving at. And what is that conclusion? That in the countries with the higher rates of reported whiplash injuries, so the commentator's conclusion is about these countries, half of the reported cases are spurious. So the commentators are concluding that half of the cases here are fake. So this is one of the conclusion that is given to us. And this conclusion has been drawn by the commentators. Now, does the author agree with this conclusion? No. The author does not agree. How do we know? Because we have been given here that the author is saying that these facts do not warrant the conclusion drawn by some commentators. Now, this is the author's opinion. This is the author's conclusion that we cannot arrive at this conclusion. Right? Now, let's read further. Clearly. Now, this is a conclusion indicator, and a lot of students consider that whatever follows it will be the main conclusion because there's no other conclusion marker in the passage. So, is the last statement, the second boldface statement, the main conclusion? Let's understand. In countries where automobile insurance does not include compensation for whiplash, so the author is talking about these countries now. People often have little incentive to report whiplash injuries that they have actually suffered. So the author is saying that This lower frequency is because there is no compensation, and because of this no compensation, there is no incentive to report such injuries. And that is why this frequency is less. So, this is the author's explanation of this difference in numbers, this difference in frequency given here. The commentators are saying that this is more than the actual number, right? Because half of the cases are fake. So the commentators are saying that okay, the actual number of injuries in these countries is actually less than what is being reported. But the author is looking at it from a different perspective. The author is saying that the number of reports here is less than the actual number of injuries. Everyone is not reporting because there's no compensation, so there's no incentive. So there are people who are not even reporting their injuries. So these are two different perspectives related to this difference in frequencies. One is by the commentator, and the author does not agree with it. The author presents an alternative explanation, and based on this explanation, the author arrives at this conclusion that we cannot arrive at the commentator's conclusion from these facts, which means that the author is saying that we cannot say that half of these cases are fake. That is the author's opinion. Now, let's understand which of these is the main conclusion. So, we have three conclusions here, two by the author and one by the commentators. So, definitely the author does not agree with the commentator's conclusion, and therefore it cannot be the main conclusion. Now, let's see which one of these two is the main conclusion. Now, what is the right way to identify? These both are authors' opinions, authors' conclusion. They both are in line. It's not that they are contradicting each other. So, in such cases, how to identify the main conclusion? We will see if we can say that conclusion one is because of two. In that case, one will be the main conclusion. If the reverse is true, that is, we say that 2 is because of 1, in that case, 2 will be the main conclusion. So let's check this scenario first. Can we say that 1 is because of 2? Can 2 support conclusion 1? Let's see. So, can we say that because it is incorrect to conclude that half of the cases are fake, because this is given to us, let's say that it is incorrect to conclude that half of the cases are fake, that is why we can say that less frequency is because people don't report all injuries? No, that doesn't make sense, right? So that is why this scenario is not correct. So one cannot be the main conclusion. Let's check scenario number 2. 2 because of 1. Can we say that because people do not report all injuries, leading to less frequency, because people do not report all injuries, it is incorrect to say to conclude that half of the cases in the other countries are fake? That makes sense, right? Here you are saying that because people here do not report all the cases, this number is not reliable. Because this number is not reliable, it is possible that this conclusion is incorrect. Because the number here is not correct, it is not correct to conclude that half of the cases here are fake. This scenario makes sense, which means that this conclusion number 2 is the main conclusion. So the main conclusion here is that it is incorrect to conclude that half of the cases are incorrect, which is presented by this statement. This is the main conclusion here. So let's quickly update our bridge table before proceeding ahead. Now, if your understanding of the passage logic was correct as we discussed, you understood what the passage is conveying, you understood the meaning of all the statements, you understood the logic behind every statement, you understood which statement is a fact, which statement is an opinion, whose opinion is what, all that was clear to you, then mark a tick here. If you missed any of these things, mark a cross here and write down the exact reason. You did not read the passage properly, you missed reading something, you rushed through the passage, you were not focusing on understanding whose opinion is given there, you were not focusing on understanding whether the author agrees to it or not, or you did not you just got carried away with words such as clearly. So all that, everything, the main reason which led to this mistake, that the passage logic was not clear to you, should come here. Again, if you understood the conclusion correctly, and you understood which conclusion has been drawn by the author, which conclusion has been drawn by the commentators, do they both agree with each other, which one is the main conclusion. If everything was clear, mark a tick here. If you missed anything, mark a cross here, and give the exact reason behind this mistake here. With this, let's move on to understand what should the correct answer choice convey. So the first statement, which is also the first boldface statement, is a fact. It neither supports nor goes against the main conclusion. We know the main conclusion has been given here. This is the main conclusion. This is the conclusion by the commentators, and this is the intermediate conclusion, which is also the second boldface, and it supports the main conclusion. The first statement here, the first boldface statement, also presents a situation. It gives a comparison in terms of number of whiplash injuries reported for two different types of countries, and two possible interpretations or two possible explanations for this difference in frequencies has been given in the passage. One explanation has been given by the commentators. The other explanation, to which the author does not agree with the commentator's explanation, and the author presents a different explanation, explaining why the author does not agree with the commentator's explanation. So that is what the correct answer choice should convey. The first one is a fact. It neither supports nor goes against the main conclusion, and it can talk about the situation which has been given, a comparison that has been given, or something that has been discussed in the passage, or something for which two different explanations have been given. Any kind of information related to this BF1, this kind of information will be correct. Now, BF2 is the reason behind the author's conclusion, author's main conclusion. It supports the author's main conclusion, and it is also the explanation that the author has provided, and it differs from the explanation which the commentators have provided. So it also acts like an intermediate conclusion here. Choice A. The first is a claim that the argument disputes. So as per this choice, boldface 1 is a claim. Is that true? Is boldface 1 a claim? No. Boldface 1 is a fact, as we discussed. It is not a claim. That the argument disputes. Now, does the argument say that boldface 1, the information given in boldface 1, is not correct? No, the argument takes it as a fact and it accepts it. The argument does not dispute boldface 1, and that is why the explanation for boldface 1 is incorrect. Let's read further. The second boldface is a conclusion. So yes, we saw that it is an intermediate conclusion that has been based on that claim. Okay, so we can say that because this conclusion is based on the difference that is given in the frequency in these two countries and the information about the inclusion of compensation. So it is kind of based on that claim. So we cannot reject the explanation of BF2, but clearly the explanation for BF1 is incorrect, making this choice incorrect. Now, if you selected this answer choice, it means one, the passage logic was not clear to you. It was not clear that the passage does not dispute BF1. Secondly, your understanding of facts versus claims is not correct. BF1 is not a claim. So you could have rejected choice A for any of these two reasons, but you could not reject it because you faltered at both these points. So please update your bridge table for this choice accordingly. Choice B. The first is a claim, again, as discussed in choice A, it is incorrect. The first is not a claim. That has been used to support a conclusion that the argument accepts. So, a conclusion that the argument accepts is the author's conclusion, right? It can either be the main conclusion or the intermediate conclusion. And we know that BF1 neither supports nor opposes the main conclusion. Right. Now, the intermediate conclusion is derived from it, but it is not a reason for arriving at the intermediate conclusion. It does not directly support intermediate conclusion. It is an explanation. The intermediate conclusion is an explanation of the situation that has been presented in BF1. We cannot say that BF1 supports the intermediate conclusion. So this choice, this explanation for BF1 is incorrect for two reasons. One is that it is not a claim. Second is it does not support any conclusion that the author has arrived at. Now let's read the second part. The second is that conclusion. That conclusion means the conclusion that the argument accepts. So, yes, second is an intermediate conclusion. It is author's conclusion. So, it is something that that the argument accepts. So, we cannot definitely reject boldface 2, the explanation of boldface 2 here, but the explanation for boldface 1 is definitely incorrect. If you selected this choice, again, your understanding of fact versus claim is not correct. Secondly, your understanding of the passage logic and structure there is not correct. You could not evaluate this part properly, whether BF1 supports author's conclusion or not, or whether it is neutral to that. So please update your bridge table accordingly. Choice C, the most popular incorrect answer choice. The first is evidence that has been used to support a conclusion for which the argument provides further evidence. Now, does BF1 support any of the three conclusions? We have three conclusions here, right? One is by the commentators, that this one is by the commentators, this one is by the author. This is the first one, and this is the second one by the author. So we have three conclusions here. Does BF1 support any one of these conclusions? The answer is no. BF1 presents a situation for which different explanations have been given, and these explanations turn out to be the conclusions here. BF1 does not support any conclusion. So, this is one reason why this choice is incorrect. Let's read further. The second, that is the second boldface, is the main conclusion of the argument. So again, we already discussed that BF2 is not the main conclusion. The main conclusion is this one. BF2 is not the main conclusion. And if you selected this answer choice, you did that because your understanding of how to arrive at the main conclusion when we have two conclusions by the author, that is not clear to you. Because this is the choice that says that BF2 is the main conclusion. You selected this choice, you might have ignored the other errors here. Even if you were able to spot them, you ignored those errors and you selected this choice because this understanding was not clear to you how to arrive at the main conclusion. So please update your bridge table accordingly. Time for the correct answer choice. Choice D. The first is a finding. So can we say that the first is a finding? Yes, it is a situation. It is a comparison that has been given to us. We can say that it is a finding. No issue with that. Whose implications are at issue in the argument. Now, what does this mean? It means that the argument is discussing what this finding means, how it can be interpreted, what does it imply. Now, is that correct? Yes. In the argument, we have seen that the commentators are interpreting this comparison in one way, and the author is interpreting this comparison in another way, and they do not agree with each other. They have very different interpretations of this particular finding. So we can correctly say that the first is a finding whose implications are at issue in the argument. So explanation for BF1 is correct. Let's read BF2. The second is a claim. So yes, we know that second is a claim. It is the author's claim presented in order to argue against deriving certain implications from that finding. So, can we say that second, this BF2 is a claim that the author has presented so as to argue against deriving certain implications? Yes, the author has presented this claim to convey, to argue that the given facts do not warrant the conclusion, do not warrant the implications drawn by the commentators from the finding given in BF1. And that is why this choice is the correct answer choice. Now, if you rejected this answer choice, one reason can be that you were not sure about the main conclusion. You thought that BF2 is the main conclusion. You saw choice C, which mentions BF2 as the main conclusion, and you went ahead with that. So, that can be one reason you did not evaluate this choice at all. The second reason can be that you were not able to understand this answer choice, what this answer choice is saying. So, if that is the case, take this as an example because this kind of language is common in boldface questions. There are not a lot of different phrases that are used to describe such situations, so you will see such descriptions repeatedly. So if you understand these what these terms mean, how these phrases work in this question, you should be able to apply the same in other questions that are using such phrases. So if that is the case, this is what will go into your bridge table. And do mention what, as explained, do mention what these phrases mean so that you can apply them in any other question that is testing them. Now let's move to the last answer choice, which is choice E. Choice E. The first is a finding. So, yes, we can say that it is a finding whose accuracy is evaluated in the argument. So, is the argument evaluating whether BF1 is accurate or not? Is it trying to evaluate whether it is correct or not? How accurate is it? No. So, that is why this explanation is incorrect. Let's read further. The second is evidence. Now, can we say that second is evidence? It is a claim. It is there's no evidence given here. It is a claim presented to establish that the finding is accurate. Now, is the purpose of presenting BF2 to convey that the finding in BF1 is accurate? No, it is not at all related to accuracy, and therefore choice E is incorrect. Now, if you marked choice E, it means that your understanding of the passage was not correct. What is statement 1 doing? What is being discussed in the statement, in the passage? What is being questioned in the passage? That was not clear to you because you were not able to understand that the accuracy is has not been discussed in the passage at all. So most likely that is the reason why you selected choice E, or you were not able to shortlist any other answer choice and you ended up marking choice E, in which case again your understanding of the passage as well as the answer choices was not correct. So please update your bridge table accordingly. With this, we are done with the first question. I hope you will be able to update your bridge table and your error log for this particular question. Also, I hope this explanation will help you understand how to differentiate between the main conclusion and the intermediate conclusion. The other thing that you need to understand here is how important it is to understand the passage logic as well as the answer choices before marking the correct answer choice. Now, as promised, here is the other OG question which is based on the same passage. This question has different sentences highlighted as boldface, and therefore the answer choices are different, but logic of the passage stays the same. Do try this one and let me know how it goes. Good luck.